Alright, it's time to yap about Barbie movies for like the millionth time. Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. So first off, for those of you who don't follow me on my socials and haven't seen the news, well, I'm engaged! My boyfriend, or I guess I should say fiance, proposed during our Disney trip last month. Like I said, I posted it on my Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, so like if you're not following me on there, you probably should be. The links for all of those are in the description. But he did it on the Ferris wheel during the Oogie Boogie Bash, which for those of you who might not know is the Halloween party that they have over in Disneyland. And that is why I was wearing an Addison cosplay when it happened, as it was a costume event. Which was kind of perfect, as Zombies was the very first movie that we ever watched together. And I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of catch on to a vibe that I thought he was going to propose that night. And I'm actually glad I did, because at first I was like, oh no, is he actually gonna propose to me while I'm dressed as Addison from Zombies? But then I realized how on brand that would be for me, and I kind of got excited by that idea. So in the end, it was a good thing that he did, because I kind of fixated on that and probably would have been very disappointed if it didn't happen. And also now Chandler Kinney has seen our proposal, Meg Donnelly reacted to our proposal as well, and so like, what more could a girl want? And like I said, I did have a suspicion that it was going to happen, but I didn't know for sure. And so when we got to DCA, I kept wanting to stop at all of like the photo pass locations so we could get photos of our costumes. And Josh didn't want to ruin the surprise, but he also kind of knew that I would probably prefer these photos to have happened after I already had the ring on, but obviously he couldn't tell me that. And so he was just like, okay, I think we've had enough photos. Can we get on the Ferris wheel now? And I'm like, I don't know why you're so obsessed with this Ferris wheel. Like, it's going to be pretty at nighttime as well, but obviously he had a nice idea in mind to do it when the sun was setting, and he did get us there in time. So good job, Josh. Another fun fact is that mid-proposal, I made him get down on his knee, because obviously we're in this Ferris wheel, and so we're sitting like on benches across from one another. And when we got in, the cast member told us to stay seated. But then once Josh was proposing to me, I was like, hey, you need to get down on one knee. And so I tapped him on his leg and pointed down, and he did get down. So don't tell Disney about that little fun fact, but that is what happened. But no, it was perfect. I cried a lot. I know you guys wanted all of the details, as you are hopeless romantics like myself, and so I wanted to make sure I gave you guys a little bit of an insight to that moment and how perfect it was. But enough about my love life, as we're here to talk about the love lives of some fictional characters today. You guys have been begging me for months for more Barbie movie content, and I thought that it would only be fitting for me to finally rank all of these ships from all of the Barbie movies. And since there are 45 ships that we're going to be covering today, I'll try to keep my disclaimers quick. So first of all, to be included in this list, you had to be in one of the 43 animated Barbie movies. I will be including canon and non-canon ships, but a very important factor that a non-canon ship needed to be included in this list was that I myself needed to ship them. Otherwise, I just felt like it would have been anarchy and I wouldn't have known where to draw the shipping line. And honestly, I found ranking all of these ships to be very hard. Actually, no, I feel like ranking the top of the list and the bottom of the list was pretty easy for me, but it was that middle section that I definitely struggled with. And so that is why I decided to split the list into 3 tiers. We have the bottom tier, which are the ships that I either hate or I just feel like didn't really get enough screen time, the mid tier, which I feel like speaks for itself, and then the top tier, which includes the ships that I feel like can do no wrong. And so with all of that being said, let's jump right into the bottom of this list.
Princess! Looks like everybody who's anybody is here tonight. Any chance Super Sparkle will show up?
Why? Do you need to be rescued?
So at the very bottom, we have Wes and Kara from Princess Power. If you're not familiar with these two, basically Kara is a princess who is also a superhero, and Wes is a reporter. They first meet after Kara saves his life, and then Wes creates a blog in which he writes only about her. And so I feel like on the surface, they are pretty good. But where they lose me is in the plot, because Wes is quick to figure out that she is Super Sparkle, and then he immediately writes an article about it. Which, like, I understand, he is a reporter and that's his job. But if you want me to ship these two, you can't have the guy literally exposing her identity to everybody. That's gotta be like rule number 1 that you don't do when it comes to dating a superhero. To be fair though, Kara doesn't exactly seem too upset about this. They do have a flirty moment near the end where it's implied that she's forgiven him for this, but I don't care if she has, because I haven't, and I will never forget what you did, Wes. And I'm honestly also just like confused as to if I'm even supposed to be shipping these two characters together or not. And a good ship does not leave me confused or questioning as to if they should be together. And so we have a Wes and Kara at the bottom of this list, and that was a very easy decision for me to make.
But first, sometime when it's not Christmas and we're not going off to visit your family, I was wondering if I could have the pleasure of, that is, if I could have the honor of...
Freddie, are you asking me on a date?
Yes?
Now, this is a classic Barbie movie, so having these two ranked this low might cause an upset, but just like try to hear me out. If you're not familiar with these two, basically their story is that they've been friends for a while and everybody knows that they like one another. And so they're all just waiting for him to finally ask her out. But that's pretty much where their story begins and ends. It's referenced at the beginning of the movie when everybody's like, oh, Freddie, you gotta ask her out already. And then at the end when he finally does it. That's pretty much it, and that's honestly just not enough for me. And I think a lot of people would agree with me in the fact that I feel like they are just a forgettable ship. My distaste for these two also probably wouldn't be as strong if Catherine wasn't a part of another ship in this movie that I feel like is infinitely better, but of course we'll touch on that later. As far as Catherine and Freddie are concerned, their existence bothers me, and so that's why they are here on this list.
You're twins.
What? No. Really? Mum should have told us. I feel cheated, duped, hoodwinked.
They think they're charming.
Rakish.
Roguish.
Now, this is one that I feel like a lot of you were probably expecting to see make an appearance on the bottom of the list. I think it's no secret that the true love story from A Diamond Castle has absolutely nothing to do with these twins, kind of similarly to the previous ship that we discussed, but once again, we'll save that for later. For me, when it comes to Ian and Jeremy, it's almost like I understand what they were trying to do, but it honestly just falls flat for me. They're supposed to be these like charismatic, funny guys, but I'm sorry, I just don't find any aspect of them to be charming whatsoever. If you're not familiar with their story, basically Alexa and Liana are on a journey to find the Diamond Castle, but it's a long journey and so they need food. So they stop into a tavern and fill in for Ian and Jeremy, who are supposed to be performing there. Then of course they come in mid-performance and are charmed by them and think that they're talented, that is for girls at least. Afterwards they introduce themselves to them through song, which is pretty iconic, I will give them that. And then they end up helping them at various points throughout their journey. But for me, I feel like the connection that they have with the girls feels very surface level throughout the film. To the point where like I don't even know if Alexa and Liana actually had any interest in them whatsoever. I mean, the movie literally ends with them waving goodbye to them as they head back to their cottage together alone. There's also the fact that for me to determine which guy was supposed to be with which girl, I had to go based off of whose horse they rode on the back of, which I honestly feel like was just such a great example as to the lack of effort that this love story was given. And so it's because of all those reasons that I felt like they deserve to be right here on this list.
Erica, I almost didn't recognize you.
Yeah, it's not exactly my style, but my roomies here thought I needed a new look.
Up next, we have Erica and Edmund from Rockin' Royals. Rockin' Royals is one of 4 Princess Switch movies. So we have Erica, the pop star who has found herself at Camp Royal. She's quick to join an existing friend group, and in that friend group is Edmund. And honestly, the scene that I included for you guys is one of their only scenes that they have in this entire movie. We do also get to see him helping her out with her royal classes, and they have a somewhat flirty bump in at the end of the movie as well, but that's pretty much it. And as this was like the canon ship from the movie, I felt like I had to include it, but I can only imagine that a lot of people probably ship Erica and Courtney together instead. And I feel like I used to as well, but on this rewatch, they just didn't really do it for me, and so they're not going to be included on this list. I apologize. I feel like I have a hard time shipping characters that don't get much screen time together, and that is definitely the case with these girls as they're switching places throughout the entirety of the movie. I should also mention that the camp directors from this movie get together as well. I didn't include them either because they're adults and I didn't care about them. And so that left us with Erica and Edmund as the representative ship from Rockin' Royals, and they failed in that department. And so on to the next.
Elena, out of everything that happened here, meeting you was the best part.
I'm really going to miss you, Lyndon.
I'm going to miss you too.
So now we have Alina and Lyndon from Fairytopia. They were featured in the 3rd movie, Magic of the Rainbow. And I feel like they tried a few times to give Alina a man in this franchise and it just never really worked. In this movie, they kind of did like a Harry Potter thing where we have all these fairies coming to this school to be apprentices. Lyndon is a friend that she makes along the way and is also training to be an apprentice as well, but for me personally, I just never really saw any sparks flying between the two of them. He was a good friend and confidant, but honestly didn't really do it for me as a love interest. And so that is why I felt like they belonged right here. Okay, so now we're kind of sticking in the Fairytopia realm, as up next we have Z and Anu from the Mariposa sequel. And this is our first non-human couple on this list, but don't worry, they may be the first, but they are definitely not the last. Basically, Z and Anu meet once their parents are meeting, who are Mariposa and Catania, and at first, Anu is very mean to Z. He is scary and growls at her when they first meet. He also throws fruit at her, laughs at her, and slams a door in her face. He later burps at her and continues to bug and growl at her, but then things start to take a turn when the girls start to bond, and they do as well. And then I guess their relationship turned into a somewhat romantic one. As you saw, they share a moment together in the gems where they almost kiss, I think. They also flirt and dance together at the ball, and then we see them cuddling together at the end as well as share a kiss before the credits. So honestly, I feel like these two puffballs are like the best story arc that we've seen so far from this list. For me, I kind of just see them as a knockoff of Bibble and Dizzle, and like nothing beats the original. And so I felt like I had to place these two a little bit lower just out of respect for the king himself. And I also really didn't like Anu's initial behavior towards Z, and so I feel like she deserves better.
Sorry, I'm afraid I'm a bit new to all this.
It's okay. This is my first job, too. I'm Lumina.
Pleasure to meet you, Lumina. I'm Delphin.
Dolphin?
Okay, so now we have definitely reached a little bit of a turning point in this list. I honestly don't hate the ships that are coming up next, we just really don't get enough screen time of them. And our first example of this is Lumina and Delphin from Pearl Princess. I feel like these two are pretty cute. They first meet while Lumina is working at a hair salon, and Delphin gets kind of roped into bringing in some packages. And so when they first meet, she assumes that he's a delivery guy. She later comes to find out that he's actually the prince. We see them dance together at the ball, and he calls her a princess. She claims that she's not a princess, but then quickly comes to find out about 5 seconds later that she is actually a princess. So overall, a cute ship, but definitely not enough screen time for me to be able to put them any higher on this list.
Whoa!
Whoa!
And now, in a strange turn of events, I was actually more charmed by Kiara and Liam on this rewatch than I really thought I would ever be. I think a previous Caitlin would have probably placed these two way lower on this list, but this time I feel like I just knew what to expect from them, which really is not much. And then I was kind of like pleasantly surprised by their connection in this film. Obviously, this is another Princess Switch movie, and so Kiara is a pop star, but then when she first meets Liam, she's acting as Princess Tori. Liam obviously doesn't know that she's not Tori, and we don't really see much of them besides their first meeting and a little montage of them spending time together while she's pretending to be the princess. At the end of the movie, we see him looking for her all night, which I found to be sweet, and then he does also help them save the day kind of in the end. There's also this funny moment where he sees both girls near the end and he's like, wait, which one am I supposed to be into? Which I think I've interpreted negatively in the past, but I thought that it was funny this time. And so yeah, honestly, I feel like these two aren't as bad as I've made them out to be previously, and so 38 felt like a right spot for them to be.
I don't know how to thank you.
You don't have to thank me. I wanted to help.
So now we head back to Fairytopia with our ship from the first film, which is of course Alina and Nalu. And sticking with the not enough screen time theme, these two are only featured in one scene together. In this scene, Alina and her friends are trying to escape from the Firebirds, and Nalu helps them. He's smitten by her right off the bat, and they share a lot of staring moments. I think 5-year-old Caitlin would be a little bit upset by me putting them this low on this list, because I do remember liking them when I was a child, but 26-year-old Caitlin knows that there are much better things in store for Alina, and so let's move on.
Nalu's in love with you. Just like you're in love with him.
Lena?
Is that true?
What do you think?
So just slightly above Alina and Nalu, we have Nori and Nalu. In the Fairytopia sequel, we meet Nori, who is Nalu's best friend and also has a bit of a crush on him. She is very intimidated by Alina at first as she's heard about their previous encounter, but then we find out in the end of the movie, as you saw, that she actually has nothing to worry about as Nalu does reciprocate her feelings. So they're a little bit of a best friends to lovers moment. They also have a little bit of a forbidden lover story in there as well, as he's royalty and she's a commoner, and she spends the whole movie trying to save his life. And I do like these two, which is why they're kind of a little bit higher on the list, but there is still something holding me back, and that is the fact that I feel like her connection with somebody else is a little bit stronger, but again, we'll get to that later.
Enough with the racket! Can't the dog get some sleep?
Ooh la la.
Up next, we have Sequin and Jacques from Fashion Fairy Tale. I think that this is our first and only ship between dogs on this list, and so they've got that going for them. Basically, Sequin is Barbie's dog and Jacques is her aunt's, and the two of them meet when Barbie comes to Paris to visit. Naturally, Jacques is a fashion designing dog and Sequin kind of becomes his muse. And honestly, I would think that that was all their relationship was, just like an artist and his muse. But Jacques does immediately follow up this like slow-mo meet cute moment with a pickup line, and so I think it's very obvious that he is interested. And they do kind of balance each other out quite well. Jacques is like this proper, very well-spoken French dog, whereas Sequin is more like flamboyant and fun and more like a stereotypical dog. And yeah, they have some cute moments, even sharing an almost kiss at one point. If you are a Sequin and Jacques fan, I am sorry that they are a bit lower on the list. They're just not one of my own personal favorites.
You know, pastries and fried corn chips are a key staple to the ninja diet. Helps them keep a keen mind and a cool hand.
Well, I guess you should eat up then.
Oh no, oh no.
Now it's time for another ship that I think a lot of you guys were expecting to see here. And if you weren't, you should probably go watch my Ken ranking video because Kevin was ranked very low. And that is mainly due to the fact that he's a little bit of a creep. But the nostalgia that I have for this movie and the friends to lovers, lover in me just bumped them up a little bit on the list. So in this movie, Barbie is in high school and her and Kevin have been besties for a while. We see them having movie nights together and they help one another out. There's a bit of unrequited love in there as he clearly has feelings for her, but she only has eyes for another. He then starts sending her secret admirer notes and she's completely oblivious that they're from him until the very end of the movie. They're honestly a pretty classic early 2000s teen movie ship, and I do really like them and their story arc. I just don't like Kevin. And so for that reason, I just really couldn't have them be any higher than this.
To whom do I owe my thanks?
Whoa. Corinne. Your Highness.
Since you just saved my life, why don't you call me Louis?
And now, speaking of ships that I would like more if the dude didn't suck so much, up next we have Corinne and Prince Louis from Three Musketeers. And if you are unfamiliar with this couple, then I would say that they are like pretty good on paper. They have a bit of that forbidden lovers or class difference charm to them, as Louis is the prince and Corinne is a girl who works in the palace. They have a sweet bump in meet cute, which is followed by Corinne being scolded to never speak to him again as he doesn't exist to her. But what he doesn't know is that Corinne is actually secretly training to become a musketeer. And so they later bond further after she saves his life from a runaway hot air balloon. They also share the same sentiment about following their dreams, and she encourages him to do so even as king. But then he's quick to ruin this moment when he laughs at the idea of her being a musketeer. But even after this sour encounter, Corinne does not give up in fighting to save his life and the rest of the kingdom. This results in her going to the masquerade in disguise, and he chooses her to dance with him even as she's disguised. They also share a moment on the roof near the end of the movie when they fight off the bad guy together. But honestly, for one of the more classic Barbie movies, I just would have preferred more screen time for this couple, but I guess it makes sense that they didn't get that, as this movie is more so about like girl power and the fact that you don't need a man. The movie also ends with him like basically asking her out and she's just like, thanks, but I'm too busy, and leaves. Why am I supposed to care about this ship if Corinne doesn't even care about it? So this is where I felt like they belonged.
Look, everyone! An all-you-can-eat caviar buffet!
Hello.
Now, I didn't expect to go into The Princess and the Pop Star and end up shipping The Princess and the Pop Star, but sometimes life is unexpected. I feel like oftentimes in these switching places movies, we don't get a ton of screen time between the girls that are switching places, and so that makes me have a hard time shipping them together. But really, that just wasn't the case with these two. They meet, have a super strong connection, and then realize that they look alike and decide to switch places for a day. And then it's in that super strong connection that they shared that really had me rooting for them as girlfriends. I really like how Tori is a fan of Kira before they meet. And then throughout their bonding, we kept seeing them like giggling and running off together, which just felt so flirty to me, especially when they do it to Liam, who's supposed to be like the main male love interest. Tori also trusts Kira immediately with showing her the kingdom's secret diamond tree. It's also in this moment that they add matching diamonds to their necklaces. And I just found that whole interaction to be extremely Diamond Castle coded, which honestly just furthered my delusion. And it's also those exact friendship diamonds that end up saving the kingdom in the end, so there's that. Seeing them perform together in the end as well just had me envisioning them as like a gay pop power couple. And if I liked their movie just like a little bit more, they probably would have had the potential to be even higher on this list, I'm not gonna lie. But unfortunately I did not, and so here they are. Pun intended.
So you'll come to the party? I won't leave until you say yes.
I'll be there. Save a dance for me?
I will only dance with you. Until then...
Next we have Dylan and Kristen from the Pink Shoes, and these two are kind of tricky because I definitely think that my bias plays into my love for them. And that is mainly due to the fact that Brett Dyer is the voice of the male love interest. And for my fellow Jane the Virgin fans, that is the guy who plays Michael. And so right off the bat, that's a win in my books. But Dylan and Kristen are friends and they attend the same ballet school together. And then when Kristen is magically transported into the ballet realm, he plays Siegfried, who is her love interest in Swan Lake. And so then obviously we get a bit of like a, wait, do I know you from somewhere moment? And then we get to see them dance beautifully together in Swan Lake. Unfortunately, we don't exactly get to see much of them together in the real world to really get a sense of their relationship, but I think watching him be in awe of her dancing kind of speaks for itself. And honestly, there was something about when she hugs him at the end and is on her tiptoes that just really did something for me. I honestly would have liked to see them get even higher up on this list, but I just felt like we didn't see enough of them for that to really be possible, and so this is where they ended up.
Hi.
So once again, my bias definitely plays into account with this one. These two should probably be a lot lower on this list, but I just couldn't do that. I just love Mariposa so much and like the idea of these two, and it honestly just comes down to that first meeting scene that we get between the two of them that just really did it for me. Basically, they bump into each other outside of a party. Carlos thinks that she's going to recognize him as the prince, but then she instead recognizes the book that he's reading, as it is the same book that she's reading. We then come to find out that they're both book lovers and share the same favorite, and then they go on to bond further over parties not really being their thing. He later goes to Mariposa when the queen is in trouble and she has to go on this whole journey to save the day. And then because Mariposa is gone for like the majority of this movie, he ends up spending more time with her bestie instead. And then I'm sure because of that, people probably ship the two of them together a little bit more instead. And then funnily enough, the exact same thing happens in the sequel, but I personally always found his relationship with Willa to be very like surface level friendship coded. Like to me, they definitely give off the vibe of like bestie and boyfriend. And so yeah, definitely not enough screen time between these two, and they definitely made it on this list because of my own fantasy of what I feel like they could be. But it's my list and I make the rules, and so that's that. And with that, it is actually time for us to move on to our mid tier, and so it's time for some slightly better ships.
Hey Nerd Girl, you weren't too bad at dressage trials today.
Thanks. Boy, that first prize is heavy.
Yeah, you got lucky.
So at the bottom of the mid-tier, we have a nice little side ship of Skipper and Jonas from A Ponytail. Or I guess I should say main ship, as this is the only ship that exists in this movie. But terminology aside, I do feel like these two had a really sweet enemies to lovers story. They meet when Barbie and her sisters are visiting their aunt's ranch. At first, he's very cocky and mean. He calls himself the best rider and laughs at her sister for falling in the mud. But Skipper holds her ground very well in this regard and does not shy away from teasing him back. She even calls him a doofus and edits a photo of him over a monkey. The movie then continues with some more flirty banter between the couple. He even develops a few nicknames for her like Nerd Girl and Tech Girl. And so throughout the movie, we see him slowly work up a bit of a soft side for her, even getting mad at his friends for booing her at the competition. But things really take a turn at the dance. We see him stare agape at her as she enters, and then he asks her to dance, which you saw. And then in the end, we see that he's completely changed, helping them find the magical horses and also complimenting Skipper as well. So a pretty solid arc and a pretty solid couple. Just again, I feel like it would have been nice if they could have gotten a little bit more screen time, as they were a very small fraction of this movie.
Cool.
For you.
Huh?
Not just you. All of you. Which obviously includes you.
So first of all, I just love that we're finally in the top 30 now because it means we've finally reached the ships that I actually like and make me happy. And I know it's fun to watch me hate on the bad ones, but like honestly, a lot of these movies had some pretty decent ships, which makes sense because I wouldn't sit here for an hour and talk about them if I wasn't also passionate about them. Anyways, this is another side character ship as it is another one that features someone who isn't Barbie in the ship. But I really do welcome the change as I found these two to just be so sweet. So obviously in this movie, Teresa and her friends are the new spy recruits, and Laszlo is this like nerdy inventor guy and he creates gadgets for the girls to use while they're spies. And honestly, it was pretty much love at first sight for him. He was smitten by her right off the bat, and they then go on to bond over both of them being geniuses basically. And he is just very charmed by everything that she knows as well. This results in him being very clumsy around her, which is just so adorable, or that could just be how he is, it's unclear. And throughout the movie, there's also this running joke where he says that he made something for her, when he really means that he made it for the whole group, but that little slip up shows that she was the one in mind while he was inventing, which I think is really sweet. And then there's also the fact that at the end of the movie, he immediately comes to her when she calls for backup. And so yeah, I love these two, I think they're great, just once again, I would have liked to see just a little bit more of them and a little bit more of Teresa reciprocating his feelings.
But I thought, I mean, you look like, aren't you a princess?
Are you kidding? Me? Do I look like an entitled royal whose only job is to show up and wave?
I don't know. Let's see your wave.
Coming in at number 27, we have Barbie and Leo from Starlight Adventure, and I just adore these two. I think they are so cute. If you're not familiar, this movie is kind of like Barbie's take on a sci-fi movie, and so they both become a part of a team that basically has to go and save the galaxy. We get another bump in meet cute with this one, but it's a bit more awkward as Leo does not say a thing. But I love the scene that I included in this video with her dissing royalty only to find out that he is the prince, and I love that he doesn't take it personally either, but instead jokes with her about it afterwards. So they continue to bond throughout the movie as well. We see him comfort her when she's insecure about her abilities, and then when he struggles with dancing at the ball, she steps in and helps him find the rhythm. Then during training, they get paired up together in the first sparring match. Through this, we find out that she's a much better fighter than him, which I just feel like is so on brand for the couple. And then during the rest of the movie, he's just so supportive and encouraging of her. Even near the end of the movie, when she ends up getting kicked off the mission, he doesn't hesitate in standing up to the king about it. The unfortunate part about these two is the fact that I'm not exactly too sure if I'm supposed to ship them or not. The only thing that makes me think that the relationship was intentional is that initial meet cute that we got, but we really didn't get a scene near the end of the movie that would have confirmed any sort of feelings for one another, which I feel like would have been nice to see, but maybe they were just kind of going for a more friendly situation, I don't know. And I know some people do ship Barbie in this movie with her female counterpart, Sally, but I personally just didn't really see a romantic connection between the two of them when I watched. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, who's to say? But yeah, on to the next.
Oh, there's the music. Excuse me, Father says I have to go dance.
Well, you know, I like to dance.
Really? You wouldn't mind?
And I thought your flower was beautiful.
I know. Wasn't it awesome?
Now, this ship is one that I'm definitely embarrassed to say that I forgot about, because when I rewatched this movie, I was just so taken by them. Their story is just so adorable and definitely overshadows the Barbie ship from this movie. If you're not familiar, Fergus is the son of the villain in this movie, and so he's trying to take over the throne and whatever through his kid, like he wants Fergus to be the next king. And so because of this, he really suffers from abuse from his dad. And so he meets Cora after he gets sent to the salon to get ready for the upcoming ball. He is smitten by her right from the start, and then after his makeover, Lumina introduces him. He tries to connect with her over his love for plants, and she kind of seems into it. And then when we get to the ball, she ends up seeing how terribly his dad treats him. And then she goes to comfort him. She ends up dancing with him and complimenting the flower that his dad destroyed. And then afterwards, her friend apologizes to her for being stuck with him, but she ends up getting all shy, admitting that she thinks he's sweet. And then on the other side of things, we see Fergus excitedly telling his dad that he was dancing with a real girl. And so overall, I just love these two. I think their storyline is so precious. And of course, I like getting to watch two just like pure, kind-hearted people falling in love with each other. Like, what's not to love?
Malia, wait up! You got something on your back. Oh, wait. That's just my footprints, because I stomped all over ya. Very funny.
Next up, we have Merlia and Kylie from Mermaid Tale 2, and now these two are just a classic enemies to lovers scenario. They're sports rivals, and so we first see them together during a surf meet. They share some smack talk, and it's made clear that Kylie isn't the best sport as she intentionally crashes into Merlia's board during the competition. She then continues with her villain persona when the evil fish Alistar coerces her into stealing Merlia's necklace that turns her into a mermaid. She then ends up in a whirlpool trap that Merlia has to save her from, and this is basically where everything changes for them as they start to become friends. Merlia also saves her life twice, and Kylie agrees to help her save Oceana because of this and also because of her love for the ocean. They continue to bond throughout the movie, and near the end we see that Kylie is even willing to risk her life for her, and she also helps her defeat the evil heiress. And then we get to see at the end of the movie just how much this journey has changed them and their relationship. Are they canonically dating? Maybe not, but I definitely like to see them as such, and I know a lot of people do ship them just like me. I will admit that I didn't love these two as much on this rewatch than when I watched the movie for the first time, but I did still enjoy them, and so I felt like this was the right place to have them.
You thief! You plan to steal my love, Princess Graziella!
No.
Yes, I'm going to marry... what's your name, sweetie?
Ken.
Kent!
So I honestly don't think it gets more perfect than Zane and Graziella from A Fairy Secret. Or I guess I do, because they are only, 24 on this list, but still, I do think that they are just so perfect. I mean, just first of all, talk about a grand gesture, talk about never giving up on the love of your life. For those who need a refresher, we have Princess Graziella, who is in love with her boyfriend Zane, and then her evil assistant Crystal gives Graziella a love potion that makes her fall in love with Ken instead of Zane. And she does this in the attempt to have Zane all for herself. But her plan ultimately fails when Zane refuses to give up on Graziella, even when he doesn't even know that she is acting off of a love potion. He still strikes up a duel with Ken for Graziella's favor, and then when he does find out that she is acting under a love potion, he tries his absolute best to get her to fight it and break the spell. And then this is where my one complaint comes in, which is that I wish and I feel like it would have been a lot better if their love was strong enough to break the potion on its own. I mean, like, how great would it have been if he was able to snap her out of it just by looking into her eyes? Like, that would have been perfection. But instead, we see him heartbreakingly propose to her during her wedding to Ken, and then when she does get the antidote, she remembers this. They get married and it's beautiful. And I honestly wasn't too sure if I cared enough about this ship to include it on this list at first, but the ending of this movie just really won me over, and I am now a Zane and Graciela fan through and through.
Major Mint, you're forgetting that Prince Eric was my friend.
Captain Candy! You're forgetting that I am your superior!
So up next we have King Candy and Major Mint from the Nutcracker, and this is actually our only ship between men on this list. And trust me, that is not for lack of trying. I am all for shipping the gays. They just don't really exist in the Barbie cinematic universe. I mean, I do think that it is common knowledge that most, if not all of the Barbie movies fail the reverse Bechdel test, which is why we do have quite a few lesbian ships, but not as many gay ones. So there's a little fun fact for you. Anyways, I'm getting off track. Let's get back to King Candy and Major Mint. So I would be lying if I didn't say that my main source for shipping these two came down to their dance at the end of the movie. But then rewatching this movie with that in mind, I was honestly taken back by like the banter and just various moments that they share throughout it. Like, it's just so clear to me that they are in love and hiding how they feel for one another. I love that they have a bit of like a forbidden lovers vibe with Major Mint being his superior. And I just feel like they make such a good pairing with one of them being super chaotic and the other being more chill and relaxed. It's like they balance one another out. There's even one point in the movie where Major Mint almost kills him, and then he goes on to act like he didn't care that that almost happened, but I think that that was just a way for him to hide his true feelings for him. These two are just always bickering, always getting under one another's skin, and they honestly would make quite the toxic pair, but I feel like that's part of the reason why I like them. If you don't ship these two, I understand, but I hope that you can at least see things from my perspective.
But just one more dance, then we'll go.
Not the face, not the face!
They're busy. Let's go.
So Haley and Kristen are besties, they go through this whole magical adventure together, and the whole time I was rewatching this movie, I was like, yeah, they're friends, and I wasn't really catching on to that romantic vibe that I've seen some people talk about. That is until Haley is captured by the villain and Kristen just freaks out about it. Which I get it, I would too if my friend was captured, but like it seemed more than that. She then has to go to her ice palace and save her, and just the whole time I was like, this feels so romantically charged, when are they gonna kiss? And then it got me thinking back to their journey and just how anti-everything Haley was, especially when it came down to all of these men wanting to marry Kristen. And it just, everything clicked. Like it made sense that she felt that way because she was obviously in love with her best friend. And that is what I'm here for. I love a good besties to lovers story. I love the idea of a ballerina being with her costume designer. And then at the end of the movie, when she brings her out on stage to bow with her, like it's all just perfection. And this is one where if you don't ship these two, I understand, because I also really liked their friendship on its own. And that's probably the main thing that's holding me back from having them be any higher on this list. But nonetheless, I do think that it is fun to think about them being in love and dating because it's sweet. So some of you may be surprised to see that these two made it to be this high on the list, as those that are familiar with Blair and Nicholas would know that we didn't exactly get much of them in their movie. But honestly, those two moments that we did get between the couple just knocked it out of the park for me. So much so that I really just couldn't bring myself to rank them any lower than this. So Blair and Nicholas meet while Blair is attending the Princess Charm School. She is a secret princess and he is a prince. During a dance class, Blair is forced to sit out because they don't have an even number of boys and girls. But then he ends up running into class late, bumping into her, and the two of them get paired up. This makes the popular kind of mean girl Delancey trip her during their dance because she's upset that she didn't get to dance with him. But of course, this just backfires as he ends up catching her in a very romantic fashion. And then after he catches her, they break into an upbeat dance together. Unfortunately though, that scene is really all we get to see of them, besides this moment at the end where you have a bit of a callback to this scene. But as I said, that scene was truly enough for me. I am just all in with these two, and in my mind, they end up married and living happily ever after.
I'm sorry I never invited you to sit with me at lunch. I should have.
Thanks. And I'm sorry I glared at you and turned away so much and acted mean. Do you think we can be friends?
I think we are friends.
So going back to our girlfriends, enemies to lovers theme, up next we have Barbie and Raquel, specifically from A Fairy Secret. Of course, in the beginning of the movie, Raquel is nothing short of a villain. She tries to break her and Ken up, she ruins her dress at her premiere, but things quickly change after Ken gets captured and taken to the fairy realm. Now the girls have to put their differences aside, come together and save him, and they do so beautifully. We see them connect over this fairy secret and learn to fly together. This results in one of the other characters telling them that they work well together. There's also this other great scene where Barbie brings up the fact that they went to riding camp together and that she knows that Raquel is a really talented rider. And then she gets surprised by this and the fact that Barbie even noticed that she was there. But what really does it for me is that moment near the end of the movie where Raquel admits that she always admired Barbie and just wanted to be in her life. And then Barbie apologizes for not trying harder to be friends with her. Their forgiveness is then able to break the cage that's holding them. Or as I would argue, it was actually their love that was able to break the cage, because the only other example of somebody doing this that's used in the movie is that they did it through love. There's also the fact that immediately after this, Barbie's wings transform into rainbow ones, and then tragically their love story ends up getting erased as the girls aren't trusted with the fairy secret. But what is so iconic about this is that even though everything ends up feeling like a dream, their love is so strong that that stays. So once again, I just love these two. I've loved them ever since I watched the movie for the first time, and I think I always will. And with these guys too, I don't think I shipped them in any other iterations. I mean, maybe Life in a Dreamhouse Barbie and Raquel, but I'm not too sure. I'd need to rewatch a few episodes of that to really determine. No, I don't think I do ship them. But in Fairy Secret, I definitely do. And so that is why they're on this list specifically for A Fairy Secret.
Looks like somebody's ready for bed.
Huh? No way. I'm too excited.
Well, this is the city that never sleeps. You fit in already. Spoke too soon.
So if you're an avid Caitlin McKillop video watcher, then you're probably not surprised to see these two pop up on my list. I have been a lover of Malibu and Brooklyn ever since Big City, Big Dreams, but honestly, I feel like that's where my love for them as a romantic pairing at least kind of begins and ends. Kind of similarly to Barbie and Raquel, I don't think I've ever shipped these two in any other piece of media that I've seen them in, but Big City, Big Dreams is a whole other story. That is their love story, and I will not accept any argument otherwise. If you're a classic Barbie movie fan, then you might not be familiar with this movie, and so I'll give you the rundown. They meet while studying in New York for a performing arts program. They have a bump in meet cute, and then quickly come to find out that they are both named Barbie Roberts. Because of this, they're quick to come up with nicknames for one another. The Barbie that we know is now Malibu, and this new Barbie is Brooklyn, obviously being based off of where they come from. They are very quick to form a connection with one another. We see them feeding one another pizza, kissing one another with stuffed animals, and this all happens during the song Before Us, which is like basically a love song. As you saw, there's also a great scene where Barbie falls asleep on her on the subway, and there's another great scene where Brooklyn's on the phone with her dad telling him all about Malibu as she watches her dance that just felt so romantically charged and coupley to me. And it doesn't stop there, as they basically go on to have a breakup in this movie, which includes a breakup song, and Brooklyn has to grand gesture it to apologize. And she does this by traveling all the way to Malibu to her and serenading her from the front door. I honestly don't know how you could watch this movie and not end up shipping these two, but to each their own. But like I said, I do find that to be a bit more unique to this movie specifically, and in the others they do seem a lot more besties coded. I haven't really watched their show together either, so I'm really curious to know if you guys ship them in that. You can let me know in the comments, or if they are once again more besties coded in that too. Nonetheless, I do still enjoy their love story in Big City, Big Dreams, which is why they made it at the top of the mid-tier.
I want you to have this. Tanya, I can't. With our history, no butterfly fairy should ever take a crystallite from Shimmervale. You're not taking it. It's a gift.
So the very last one that we have for this tier is Mariposa and Catania from the Mariposa sequel. And I remembered shipping these two from whenever I watched this movie forever ago, but I couldn't exactly remember why. That is until we got to a very specific scene in this movie. And then I was basically like, oh, true, yeah, girlfriends, they're in love. But basically, Mariposa gets sent to the Crystal Fairy Realm to, as we all know, defeat racism, and she and the princess start to develop this friendship. We find out that they're both lovers of reading, and we have a very Beauty and the Beast-like moment when Catania shows her the library, but their relationship really starts to bloom when Mariposa convinces her to go to the Crystal Falls with her. This location is significant because it's where Catania's childhood trauma stems from, and so the fact that she's able to go back there with Mariposa and they have a cute little date there is just everything. We see them skipping Rainbow Rocks there together, and she confides in her and tells her about what happened to her when she was little, and it's just a great moment. They also give one another gifts, Catania getting a flutterflower and Mariposa a crystallite. And then we have the ball where everything goes south, or if you're me, it's where everything gets even better. First off, Catania folds her wings down in solidarity with Mariposa, and we also get to see them dance together on their own. But the real turning point is what follows this, as everyone then comes to find out that Mariposa has a crystallite and starts freaking out about this. This then leads to her father not approving of their relationship and banishing Mariposa. And this is where I was like, oh my god, these two are the Barbie version of Romeo and Juliet. They are forbidden lovers excellence, and this whole movie is their love story. So even though Mariposa gets banned, she does help them save the kingdom. Catania gets over her fear of flying to save Mariposa's life, and their wings glow together at the end of the film after they've saved the day together. Honestly, I love these two. I feel like they can do no wrong, and they're probably my favorite part of this sequel. And with that, it is finally time for our top tier, so on to the next category. So I don't exactly know if this decision will cause some outrage or not, because I know Bibble is a fairly iconic character and I know people do enjoy these two together, but it was a bit hard for me to compare a Puffball's relationship to the relationships that humans have with one another in these movies. And to be honest, they were originally going to be in the mid tier, but then I was like, putting Bibble in mid, like no matter what the context is, just didn't feel right to me. And so then I settled with having them at the bottom of the top tier. And I hope you all can understand that decision. So Bibble Bibble and Dizzle meet in the third Fairytopia film. They're both puffballs of some of the apprentices, and their connection is basically instant. Bibble first sees her while she's sleeping and is love-struck. He then picks her a flower and she notices that he has a loose tooth. She is extremely excited by this, and this basically becomes the thing that bonds them together. That night, they don't want to be separated and are sad to have to say goodbye to one another, and this results in a very iconic scene with both of them yelling goodnight to one another from their separate rooms. And then I feel like the rest of their story is just history, like they're basically inseparable ever since meeting. In the end, we see them catch a glimpse of the Tooth Fairy together, and Bibble even shares the cupcake that he got from her with Dizzle. We also get some more content from them in Mariposa, as the whole reason Alina even tells him the story of Mariposa is because he's feeling nervous about going and meeting Dizzle's friends. And then in the end of the movie, Dizzle ends up bringing her Flutter Fairy friends to him instead. Overall, these two are just so wholesome and adorable, and I'm glad that Bibble does canonically find love in the Fairytopia universe.
Did I show up at a bad time?
No! You showed up at the perfect time. And all the way to Paris. It's the most romantic thing I could ever imagine.
Next, we have the first iteration that we've gotten of Barbie and Ken from the Barbie Cinematic Universe, and in my opinion, they do not disappoint. And so this includes the story of Barbie and Ken from a fashion fairy tale and a fairy secret, but I personally feel like they are at their height in a fashion fairy tale. I mean, it's a tragic beginning, I will admit. Barbie thinks that Ken has broken up with her over the phone and travels to Paris to be able to get over him, and then we come to find out that what actually happened was just the evil doings of Raquel. And then what does Ken do? Well, he travels all the way to Paris to fix things. Even when his plane gets grounded and he's stuck in a truck with a pig, or when he falls asleep on a train and ends up in Canada, or when he finally makes it to Paris and his taxi stops because of a flat tire, what does Ken do? Well, he gets out himself and fixes it. Like, this man truly does not give up or back down when it comes to a grand gesture. And I feel like that is exactly what this iteration of Barbie needs. Then we have him running in during her fashion show, and their reunion is just perfection. I mean, she literally calls it the most romantic thing that she could ever imagine. And then it's just topped off with the fairies giving him that magical transformation. And then, like I said, we do see them again in a fairy secret, but because he's kidnapped throughout most of it, we don't really get much ship content between the two of them. But in the beginning, we do get some teasing with him trying to steal some of her ice cream and the play fight that follows it. And then when he does end up agreeing to marry Graciela, it's only in exchange for Barbie's freedom. I feel like this iteration of Barbie and Ken is probably the closest we have to the Life in the Dream House version of the couple, which would make sense because they did come out around the same time. And since I can't include them on this list because they're from a TV show and not a movie, I do feel like they would have probably been around here, if not maybe a little bit higher, in case you were wondering.
Eden, I know you feel better when I'm there to watch you perform, but I couldn't tonight. Don't worry. I know you were brilliant as always.
I don't need you to tell me I was brilliant. I know I was brilliant. But as costume designer, I thought you might want to do your job and see the dress you made on stage.
I understand.
So going into this video, I definitely knew that people shipped Eden and Catherine, but I honestly didn't remember much of the details when it came to why that is. And so when talking about them, I really want to focus on those details because I feel like it's in those that make this couple so special. So obviously it's a Christmas Carol retelling, and Eden is our Scrooge character, and she is also Catherine's boss. And she is honestly pretty awful to her and the rest of her employees. She yells at them, belittles them, forces them to work through the holidays, but throughout all of this, Catherine still treats her with kindness and claims that they are friends. And immediately for me, when I rewatched this movie, the sirens were going off. I was just like, this might be one of the most toxic dynamics I've ever seen, and I could not fathom how people shipped these two. That is, until we learn more about Eden and their backstory. So first of all, the ghost of the Christmas past comes and brings Eden back to her childhood, and this is when we learn about the abuse that she suffered as a child, and how Catherine and her family were basically her relief and salvation from that. Obviously, this does not excuse her behavior later in life, but it does offer an explanation, which I also think is important. And after learning about her past and how much of a rock Catherine was for her, something clicked for me and I understood why people love these two so much. It's the fact that Catherine has stood by her throughout everything. She doesn't excuse her behavior, she still calls her out, and she's the first to throw a tomato at her portrait as well when all the other employees are doing so. But she also doesn't shy away because she knows why she ended up that way. She knows that her friend is still in there, but she's also aware of what she's suffered from, and that's why she's not not giving up on her. And then it was just so sweet to see them as children together in matching outfits performing for her family. Freddie claims very early on in the movie that Eden doesn't do anything without consulting Catherine first. And we also learn that she's the reason why Eden has this job today, because she's the one that pushed her to get it. And then when she goes into Christmas Future and realizes that if she keeps treating people like this, then she's just going to pull Catherine to the dark side with her. And it's that realization that gets her to change. I just feel like there are so many layers to this ship and their dynamic is so unique, especially for an animated children's movie. And the ending is just so perfect when she learns about Catherine's work at the orphanage and goes to surprise the kids there. And this sparked a headcanon for me that the two of them later end up getting married and adopting a kid from the orphanage together. They are just such a complex besties to lovers duo, and I just knew I had to do them justice with their ranking on this list.
What a beautiful song. Thanks. My mom taught it to me. Whoa.
Alright, so the Princess and the Pauper has finally entered the chat. And I know a lot of people do really ship these girlies together, and so I'll try my absolute best to do them justice. So let's start off at the very beginning. A very good place to start. So we have Erica, who is a seamstress, and Annalise, who is the princess. The two of them meet in the market one day while Erica is busking, and they quickly come to realize that they have the same exact face. And this results in a bit of a moment while they're taking off their hoods that they realize that, which I feel like could definitely be interpreted as like a love at first sight kind of moment. Annalise then opens up to her about her struggles, and I feel like the movie and Annalise in particular are often criticized for this, but I absolutely love Erica's reaction to this. Instead of making her feel bad for complaining to somebody obviously much less fortunate than she is, Erica instead finds a way to relate to her, and they break into the iconic song, A Girl Like You. And then, as we know, Annalise unfortunately ends up getting kidnapped, and so her tutor enlists Erica's help to pass off as the princess until she returns. And then they are reunited in the end of the film while they defeat Preminger together, and also have a double wedding. And I personally feel like the wedding shot where we see the two of them together in their wedding dresses has got to be one of the main reasons why people do ship these two together. But there is also the fact that they do have that really strong connection. They look identical, they have butterflies that represent them, the fact that Erica makes all of her dresses, and there's also the fact that Erica agrees to go and help her even if it means that she could be thrown in jail or worse. And now I think for me personally, I really like the idea of shipping these two. I just can't get behind them canonically speaking. The fact that they look identical I feel like creates complications when it comes to shipping the two of them, as it does create a bit of a sisters vibe, and I personally just feel like they don't spend enough time together in this movie for me to really see them having any romantic connection. We get a little of them in the beginning and then a little more at the end, but that's practically it. Like I said, I do really like the idea of them, and I understand why people do ship them together, which is why they are so high on my list, but also probably because of my bias. Like, I don't think I could rank anything Princess and the Pauper related any lower than this, but that's just my 2 cents.
I'm so glad you're here. May I have this dance?
No. Look at all these people.
Well, they've seen dancing before.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Any girl who faces down crocodiles can handle a dance with me.
So I feel like I've done Ro and Antonio kind of wrongly in the past, and so I really wanted to rectify that with this list, and I do think that this is a great spot for them. I mean, we start off with her saving his life from crocodiles. She communicates with them, and then he is just smitten by her right off the bat. But I feel like I should back up a bit, and so we have Prince Antonio, who is the prince and also a traveler, and then we have Ro, who has been stranded on this deserted island ever since she was little. So the two of them meet after he visits her island, and then he ends up taking her back to civilization with him. And of course, this is all by choice, as Ro does want to learn more about her past and where she came from. This results in the incredible song I Need to Know, which is sung on their way back to the mainland. The song speaks about Ro's desire to learn more about where she came from, and also hints at her feelings for this man that she just met. And then his verse speaks the same about her. While they're at his castle, he never judges her for growing up on an island or being able to communicate with animals. Like I said, if anything, he's really charmed by this. But then of course we do have our conflict. As this isn't just any love story, it is also an impossible love story. This is because as Antonio is the prince, he is required to marry a princess, and he quickly comes to find out that he is betrothed to another. Antonio is quick to say that he can't as he's in love with Ro, but his parents have other ideas. The movie continues, and of course we get a ball, and the reaction that Antonio gives to Ro when she enters is just 10 out of 10. They go on to dance together, even though Ro is hesitant to this, and I love his reply as he encourages her by saying that any girl who can face down crocodiles can handle a dance with him. Unfortunately though, this moment is very short-lived as Ro is still insecure about him being betrothed to another, and this ends up being the catalyst for Antonio deciding to give up his crown so that him and Ro can run away together. Plot things then end up happening, of course, and Antonio ends up having to bargain Ro's freedom in exchange for him marrying Luciana. Luckily though, she comes back thanks to some dolphins. Their wedding gets interrupted, the villain is revealed, and he ends up proposing to Ro. We also get a wedding between these two as well, and then the movie ends with them sailing off on the open water, and I feel like that is just such a perfect ending for these two. And I know that this isn't about Luciana, but I like that they hint at her getting her happy ending as well with Julian's doppelganger. And just overall, I feel like Ro and Antonio have a great story, lots of great tropes, but for me personally, they do fall a little flat in comparison to some of the ships that are up next. I feel like they had a lot of the right pieces, but there was just something about them that I felt like lacked a certain spark and chemistry. They didn't have a lot of moments that left me like swooning like some of the other ships that we have coming up next. But that's not to say that I don't like them, as I obviously do, as they are my number 13.
Quite a big bark you have there, Rover.
It's, Wolfie. Not Rover.
Well, thank you, Wolfie, not Rover. My name's Serafina.
And once again, you guys know me, you know who I am as a person, and you know that sometimes my bias just can't be controlled. And this is definitely one of those circumstances. Should a romance between cats be this close to the top 10? Maybe not, but luckily for me, this list has 0 consequences and I can do whatever I please. Now, their love story definitely doesn't have as much meat to it, but that's okay. I feel like sometimes a story can be just as strong even if it is more simple. So Wolfie and Serafina first meet in the marketplace while their owners are doing the same, and when the evil Midas comes to chase Serafina, Wolfie is quick to come to her defense. And these two are just so flirty right from the start. I think if the girls didn't end up interrupting them, we could have been dealing with some kittens even earlier in the movie. I also feel like it's important to note that their love story is part of the reason as to why Annalise and Julian are able to get out of the mines. Because Hervé goes to Wolfie and Wolfie is able to dig a hole that they end up escaping from. And then there's the fact that canonically speaking, they're the only Barbie movie ship on this list that we see canonically have intimate relations. Because of course we end the movie with them showing off all of the kittens that they have together, which they did not waste any time in doing, I must point out again. Honestly, whenever I was contemplating where these two would go on this list, I would think back to those kittens and how many they had, because like I feel like that is just a showcase of true love. And so if you don't agree with me putting these two here, that's fine, but this is where they are and it's my list. So get out of here. Just kidding, you can stay.
You will walk in. The prince will see you. He will ask you to dance. Then you will be in his arms and he will declare his true love to you. And then we will all be safe.
Yes, yes, my beautiful girl.
Quills, Ivan, quills.
Right, so sorry.
Next up, we have Carlita and Ivan from Swan Lake. And just talk about an absolutely adorable ship. I know they're not in the top 10, but like trust me, there were ideations of this list in which they were, which is kind of crazy. I did decide to settle with having them here though, which I feel like makes sense as they are a little bit more of a side ship. And before people come for me about shipping children together, I feel like I just need to emphasize that they are not children in this movie, they are actually elves, so take that. So I can only assume that these two met while being held captive by Rothbart, and he is the one who turned them into animals. Or I guess maybe they met before and they were friends. I could also get behind that headcanon, but obviously it is unclear as to how they met initially, as when we are introduced into the story, they already know one another. We find out that Carlita is actually the one that helped them escape, as she used her newfound skunk abilities to her advantage against the guards. And when she is telling this story, this is when we get our first hint at Ivan's feelings towards her, as he is just in awe of her and swoons over the idea of her. And honestly, I just feel like these two are just the perfect partners in crime. They make such a great pair, they finish one another's sentences, and I feel like are just such a great example of two people that match one another's freak. They also have quite a few iconic dances together throughout the movie, like how they mimic how Odette will dance with the prince to get her ready for the ball, and at the end of the movie where Carlita Carlita encourages him to dance with her now that he's lost his quills, which was another sweet aspect of them throughout the movie, was Ivan constantly forgetting that he had been turned into a porcupine and Carlita having to remind him. And so yeah, these two are just absolutely adorable and definitely one of my favorite aspects of this film. While we don't necessarily get to see them fall in love or anything, like they're more so just like a presence throughout the movie, I still love them so much nonetheless.
Nice flying.
Nice swimming. You weren't trying to ditch me or anything, right?
Me? Huh. Of course not.
Didn't think so.
So we have finally reached our top 10, and we are definitely starting off strong as we have my absolute favorite ship from the Fairytopia series. Alina and Nori are a particular ship that I hold very close to my heart and are just so incredibly special to me. And so if you don't ship them, I'm sorry, but I don't want to hear about it. These two meet in the sequel to Fairytopia, which is Mermaidia, and this comes after Alina is alerted of Prince Nalu's kidnapping. She goes to rescue him and then comes to meet the sweet but sassy Nori. And that is what begins their superb enemies to lovers story. At first, Nori doesn't want anything to do with Alina, as she thinks that she can save Nalu on her own, and so she tells Alina that she can help her as long as she can keep up with her. And then we get a marvelous chase scene, which you saw a bit of. We then get some great banter over Nori trying to ditch her, and along their journey to save Nalu, they end up developing a strong connection with one another. Alina even sacrifices her wings for a tail so that she can save her, which is a very big deal as her wings are very important to her. And then Nori's reaction to seeing her with a tail for the first time is absolutely everything. Nori, of course, then returns the favor, saving her from the Zaxane plant that trapped her. And then later on, when Alina is afraid to go through the geysers, Nori takes her hand and encourages her, saying that they'll do it together, even risking her life for a second time to go back in the geysers to save Bibble for her. Then we reach the end of the movie where Nori is actually the one who's able to come up with the solution to get Alina's wings back. And then she goes on to list all of her amazing qualities in this moment as well. So while they may have tried to force a hetero ship on us there at the end with Nori and Nalu, I think there's no denying that for me at least, the true love story is the one that we actually got to see develop right in front of us. Alina and Nori's love story is just so unmatched to me that they don't even need to be canon for them to be included in my top 10.
None of this would have been possible without you, Clara. Will you stay and be my queen?
This locket was supposed to take me home, but in my heart, I feel I'm already there.
We are truly among the greats now, as at number 9 we have Clara and Eric from the Nutcracker. This is the OG, the very first Barbie movie ship, and in my opinion, they knocked it out of the park. So Clara and Eric first meet while he is in Nutcracker form. She has actually gifted him for Christmas and she loves him. But then everything changes that night when he comes to life. Clara is then shrunken down to his size and the two of them end up having to work together to defeat the evil Mouse King. And this is something that I absolutely love about them and I feel like really shows their chemistry. Like the fact that they're able to work together so well even though they just met moments ago is just everything to me. And so of course she ends up having to go with him to the Nutcracker realm to find the Sugar Plum Princess to get her back to her normal size. And it's along this journey that they really start bonding and developing a strong connection. Clara is quick to find out that the Nutcracker is actually Prince Eric, and we get this reveal in the most perfect way with the two of them sitting in the treehouse with the full moon as their backdrop, which is something that has just been engraved in my head ever since I was little. There's also the moment that we have near the end where him and their friends get captured. Clara is able to find the cell that they're being held in, but she can't see them as they're behind an invisible shield. And so this results in a very another Cinderella story-like moment with both of them placing their hands against the shield at the same time. In the end of the movie, they both stand up against the Mouse King to protect one another, and it's her kiss that is able to break the Nutcracker spell that he's under. They say that this is because she's actually the Sugar Plum Princess that they've been looking for, but I personally like to think that true love had to play a factor in that as well. They then go on to share a dance together, which remains one of the most romantic things I've ever seen in my entire life. And then this girl is literally willing to give up everything, ever going home again, ever seeing her family again, just to be with him. She then ends up getting sent back anyways due to a last-ditch effort done by the Mouse King, and then him telling her that he loves her too as she's disappearing was just so heartbreaking. But it's actually okay as we quickly come to find out that their love actually surpasses time and space, as he is quick to show up in the real world as well. Overall, this movie is just like peak romance for me, and I feel like that's definitely something that is missed in the later movies.
What'd you wish for?
If I tell you, it won't come true. And this is definitely one wish I want to come true.
So my previous comment might have been a little bit poorly timed, as I was just harping on the newer Barbie movies, and now we have a ship that exists in the most current iteration of the franchise. I personally feel like the current version of Barbie and Ken have really stood their ground even amongst the classic Barbie movie ships. If you're not familiar, Mattel has been teasing us with this iteration of Barbie and Ken for quite some time. We first saw them together on YouTube in the Barbie vlog series. In this, we learned that they are neighbors who are best friends and have been ever since they were little. We also learned that Ken has a very big and very obvious crush on Barbie. This story then made its way into the movies. In Dolphin Magic, we saw them together a little bit, same with Big City, Big Dreams, but the two movies that really focused on their romance were Princess Adventure and Epic Road Trip. In Princess Adventure, Barbie and her friends are all chosen to go on this trip together, and the whole time Ken just really wants to be able to spend some alone time with her. He's constantly trying to find the right opportunity to tell her how he feels, and he does call her beautiful in the end, but he unfortunately chickens out when it comes to confessing his feelings. And this was probably my favorite movie that featured them, that is, until we got Epic Road Trip. If you haven't seen it, Epic Road Trip is a choose-your-own-adventure interactive movie, so I feel like I should preface this by saying that all of these events that happen are chosen by me. This is the reality that I've conducted for Barbie and Ken, and so yours might be different, who's to say? But if you want yours to be aligned with mine, all I did every time was choose Ken's option. But even if you don't do that, there is still so much flirting and moments between the two of them throughout the movie, independent of the choices that you make, and that's what I feel like makes this movie so special. So in the beginning, we see Ken sad by the idea of Barbie moving to Brooklyn with Brooklyn, and then she hints at her relationship with Ken being one of the reasons as to why she would stay. We also get a moment in this scene where she catches him from falling in a very romantic fashion, and later on in the movie, when you're given the option between choosing a souvenir dinosaur plushie or a souvenir fortune, if you choose fortune, it tells Barbie to open herself up to love. This results in the two of them talking about how she interpreted that, and then Ken asks her maybe a little bit too eagerly if she would be open to it. She says that she would for the right person, and then the two of them have a moment before they are interrupted. And then after this, we finally get a confession of feelings from Barbie. This comes after other Barbie calls her out for pretending to not be into him. That night, he sets up a whole romantic picnic for her and brings along all of her favorite foods. We hear a story about when they were in 3rd grade and he tried to cheer her up, as well as a confession from both of them about how much they missed one another. He almost tells her how he feels for her again here as well, but they are interrupted. Then this brings us to the following night where there's a meteor shower that he wants to watch with her, and then this leads to Barbie setting up a spot for them on the roof of the van. He tells her to make a wish, and then we get a montage of all of the previous moments that they've shared together, alluding to the fact that her wish is to be with him. They then go on to hold hands, and I scream internally. The next day, the two of them go on the Ferris wheel together, which, as you guys know, now has a little bit more significance for me. He then gifts her the sea glass that they found together the very first time that they went to the beach. He has since turned it into a bracelet for her, and this is when he asks her if she's ready to be more than friends. If you choose yes to this, which I obviously did, Barbie kisses him in response as fireworks go off around them. We then end the movie in the perfect way as Ken decides to move to New York with them so that he and Barbie can be together. Now, I was just so overwhelmed and happy during the entirety of this movie. I was just on the edge of my seat the whole time, just twirling my hair and kicking my feet over these two. Like I said, it's been a while since a Barbie movie has given us a real love story like they did in this one, and I just love the fact that they didn't shy away from it. I feel like they presented this relationship beautifully and wholesomely to their younger audience, and I loved how they made the viewer be involved in every aspect of it. Imagine actually getting to choose as to whether or not your favorite ship ends up together. I feel like it's just perfect. And so anyways, I just love these two, and I'm sure that there will be some Barbie classic movie purists that really don't agree with this decision of mine to have them this high up, but I was just so charmed by them in this road trip movie that I just couldn't have them be any lower than this.
They almost look magical. Precisely.
I think they look pretty magical too.
What if we made them into necklaces?
Necklaces that have the secret power to grant
a wish.
Exactly.
Best friends today.
Tomorrow.
And always.
At number 7, we have Alexa and Liana from Diamond Castle. I feel like this is another one where even if you don't ship them, it's not hard to understand why people do, because their connection is just so strong and it truly is the heart of the movie. So we start off and we are introduced to these girls who live in a cottage in the woods together. We also see lots of hand holding, some flirty dishcloth chasing, and also the scene that I included where they find 2 identical heartstones in the river. But the unfortunate fact is that they're poor lesbians and are struggling to make ends meet. Probably because their only income is the flower cart in the middle of nowhere. But after this cart and their home gets destroyed, they end up having to go on a journey together to find this diamond castle. And they have to do so before the evil Lydia does. While on their journey together, they adopt some lost puppies and are completely uninterested in these twins that try and flirt with them. There's even this one point where they have to answer this troll's riddle to be able to cross the bridge. You know the drill. And then after they answer it correctly, they do not care at all that they are then whisked off on this magical rainbow, leaving the men behind. Like, it's so straightforwardly gay, I'm not even reaching at this point. Obviously though, this movie couldn't be without its conflict, and so the girls then have a little bit of a breakup. This leads to Alexa taking off her couple's necklace, and then long story short, she ends up getting captured by Lydia. She calls Liana Alexa's ex. I think she says ex-friend, but still, like, even using that term I feel like is pretty insane. Meanwhile, Liana scoffs over the idea of missing Alexa. She then follows this by going on about her relationship and then finally confessing that she feels like a part of her is gone. She then gets captured as well, and this results in her saving her life after Lydia's sidekick tries to push her off a cliff. We then get this incredible moment where Alexa is in her arms begging her not to leave her. She is then awakened, the 2 of them make up, defeat Lydia, find the Diamond Castle, and live happily ever after. And I feel like one of the main reasons as to why people love these 2 so much is because they are like top tier cottagecore lesbians. And this is really shown in the end of the movie where they're actually given the opportunity to live in this luxurious diamond castle. But instead they choose the life that they had before in their tiny little cottage. I feel like they also continue with the symbolism near the end by having Liana's dress be the lesbian flag colors. But overall, I just love these 2 and I definitely understand why they are a fan favorite. When I tweeted that I was going to be making this video, one of the most popular ships that came up in the replies were these 2. And I feel like that just speaks to the power that they hold.
Thank you. You saved me.
As long as I wear the crystal, I'm protected. I wasn't really in danger.
That's not how it looked to me.
I'm glad you're all right.
What is this place?
I haven't seen very much, but I could show you Swan Lake.
At number 6, we have Odette and Daniel from Swan Lake, and these 2 are another one that I feel like just gives me those butterflies. And they also really feel like just the epitome of romance to me. Something about these early movies are just so good at telling these like magical love stories, and this one is just another example of that. So we have Prince Daniel, who is being pushed by his mother to get married, and then we have Odette, a village girl who gets turned into a swan. They meet after Rothbart lures him into the forest to try to get him to kill Swan Odette, but he is just so taken aback by Odette's beauty that he's unable to. She then transforms back into her human self, and he is appalled to find out that Rothbart tried to get him to kill her. Rothbart then tries to curse Daniel as well, but Odette is able to protect him. He thanks her afterwards for this, and they bond as she goes on to show him Swan Lake. And then everything about this scene is just so incredibly romantic. The elves set up a little picnic date for them and they dance together in the forest. They actually end up spending the whole night together, and in the morning, Daniel invites her to the ball with him. He also tries to get her to come to his castle with him as he feels like she'll be protected from Rothbart there, and he's really hesitant to leave her alone because of that threat, and he really wants to be able to protect her. But then he settles on helping by finding her family and telling them that she's okay. This brings us to the ball where Daniel refuses to dance with anyone but Odette, but then as we know, he is tricked by Rothbart into dancing with his daughter, who he's magically disguised as her. This causes Daniel to pledge his love to her by mistake, and this diminishes the magic in the crystal that Odette was using to protect herself from Rothbart. Obviously, Daniel quickly comes to find out that he's been tricked, and he doesn't hesitate in going up against Rothbart, even magical crystal powers aside. Luckily though, we come to find out that they actually didn't need the crystal's magic, as their true love was strong enough to defeat him in the end. And I just have to mention that moment where she perfectly falls on top of him and their hands fall perfectly in place. That moment is just stunning. We then end the movie with a dance in the enchanted forest. We don't get a wedding in this one, but they do allude to one, which I feel like is just as good. And I honestly just knew from the moment that I started making this video that these two would end up being very high on this list.
You are herewith invited to the masked ball in honor of the prince's birthday.
It's tonight.
I would have given it to you sooner, but you're hard to find.
You must be pretty important if you're invited to the prince's ball.
Oh, I don't know about that.
So I feel like with Odette and Daniel and Rapunzel and Stefan, you could really go either way. They're almost like sister ships, as I feel like they are very similar, which makes sense as I feel like the first 3 Barbie movies are basically classified in their own subcategory. I personally like Rapunzel and Stefan just like that little bit more, but that margin really isn't that big. So obviously we know the story of Rapunzel. She's a princess who was stolen as a baby and kept away in a tower. But in this iteration, Barbie is able to find an escape tunnel, and then this ends up leading her to the village. While there, she ends up saving a little girl's life from falling into a hole, and then in turn, she ends up getting saved by the girl's older brother as she almost falls into the hole while saving her. They talk, and obviously Rapunzel does not know that he is the prince, and so he decides to keep this from her. And she learns about the feud between the 2 kingdoms before she rushes back home. This leaves Stefan disappointed as he didn't even get to ask her name. Things then turn to be a little bit Cinderella-like as Stefan becomes obsessed with finding out who this girl is. He sends a bunch of knights out, but none of them have any luck. Then, exasperated, he finds himself back where they first met and she appears out of thin air. This is where he gets to learn her name, but for the sake of his safety, she asks not to know his. Rapunzel then enlists Stefan in helping her learn more about her bio parents, which he does gladly. We get some more bonding and a great moment in which the silversmith almost reveals his identity to Rapunzel. They then end their day together with Stefan asking Rapunzel to be his date to the upcoming ball, and we later find out that Rapunzel had a real positive influence on Stefan when he asks his father for permission to invite the king from the other kingdom that they're in a feud with to this masked ball. And I just love this little tidbit because I feel like it really does show that they make one another better. Onto the ball, we get another great moment between him and his dad as he tells him that Rapunzel is special to him because she likes him for who he is and not because of his crown. Gothel then shows up at the ball in place of Rapunzel and we get a fight between her and Stefan, but then of course it's Rapunzel who's able to defeat her for good. We also of course come to find out that Gothel is the reason for this feud existing, as Rapunzel is actually the daughter of the king from that other kingdom. And so by having Rapunzel and Stefan get together, it's a great way also of uniting both kingdoms. We end the movie with a beautiful wedding and the 2 of them walking on the same beach that Barbie is painting in the real world. And I'm sorry if I went too in depth with this one, but I just love these 2 so much. I feel like their story is almost like if Cinderella and Romeo and Juliet had a baby. Love these 2, they're great, and that's why they're number 5.
Do you know why I didn't want to marry the king?
You weren't ready to get married.
No, I was in love with somebody else. My best friend. The man who's taught me so much.
But I'm not a king. I can't give you what he can.
I think you're like this.
A rock?
Unassuming on the outside, but a treasure within.
Now, once again, if you're familiar with me and my content, you might be a little bit surprised to see these 2 not included in my top 3. But honestly, it just came down to when I was writing this script, the 3 ships above Annalise and Julian just really won me over. And I think part of that is due to the fact that we don't see this story from start to finish, like we're kind of introduced to them in the middle of it. And while I doubt anyone still watching this video isn't familiar with their story, I'm gonna tell it once again anyways. We start off with Princess Annalise being betrothed to another. This being due to the fact that their kingdom is out of gold and they need money stat. And Annalise is hurt by this fact not just because she now has to marry a stranger, but also because she's actually in love with someone else, which is of course Julian, her tutor, who is for some reason the same age as her, or at least not that far off, at least in my opinion, as that fact is never really made clear. I've actually heard some people say that they don't ship these 2 because of their age gap or unhealthy power dynamic, but since it's never clarified, I feel like it's fine. Like I doubt a Barbie movie for children would showcase an unhealthy relationship like that. If you want my opinion on their work relationship, I don't think that he's been her tutor ever since she was little, because that just wouldn't make sense because like I said, they do seem to be around the same age. I think he was hired later in life while they were both adults, which is how they were able to become friends and then develop feelings. Anyways, he takes her to the marketplace, and this is where he shows her where he grew up. And I love when she asks which house is his and he has to clarify that it's more of a room as they couldn't really afford more than that. And he doesn't make her feel bad for assuming or basically being the reason as to why they're in that position. As we discussed earlier, Annalise then gets kidnapped and Julian is able to sense that there is foul play right away. This being due to the fact that he's practically memorized what she sends her stationery with. He then enlists Erica for help, which we touched on earlier, but we didn't touch on the fact that by doing this, he's also putting his own life at risk for her. He then ends up figuring figuring out that it was Preminger, but unfortunately this just leads to him getting kidnapped as well. So now Julian and Annalise are being held captive in the mines, and this is the real moment where they come together and we see them bond. As you saw, she confesses to him that the real reason why she didn't want to marry Dominic was because she was in love with him. And I just love that his reaction to this is by putting her first. He's like, I'm not a king, I can't give you what he can. And then she compares him to a rock, which, love it or hate it, it is a pretty iconic moment. They're then able to work together and escape. They're able to defeat Preminger, and Annalise confesses her feelings for Julian to her mother. We end the movie with a beautiful double wedding, as we touched on earlier, and overall I feel like it's just so clear as to why I love these two so much. Besties to lovers, a student-tutor relationship, forbidden love, they both know each other so well. There's also the whole verse that he sings to her portrait during To Be a Princess, which is just so adorable. And I just love these two, and I'm sure it was no surprise that I would give these two the spot that they deserve on this list.
Anything for me?
Are you kidding? He burned the midnight oil for you.
That'll do, Felix. He's just a bird. He doesn't know what he's saying.
Oh, of course.
Can you please tighten our shoes?
These are yours. I hope you like them, Your Highness.
Next, we have another ship that came up a lot in my Twitter replies. They are very well loved, and obviously for good reason, as they are third on my list, even beating Annalise and Julian, which I feel like is a hard feat. So first off, Genevieve and Derek are obviously from the 12 Dancing Princesses. Genevieve is of course one of the princesses, and Derek is a shoemaker. So obviously right off the bat, we've got a little bit of an impossible love story here once again. We're first introduced to the couple when Derek comes to deliver ballet shoes to all of the princesses. The girls all love him and are excited to go and get their shoes from him, and I just love this part of it because it shows how good he is with her sisters, especially the little ones in particular. Then we get to Genevieve and the shoes that he made for her, and we find out that he spent the most time on her pair, staying up all night to make sure that they were extra special for her. He then watches her from afar as she puts them on and dances, and we get the reveal through his talking bird that he does have feelings for her. But he says that that doesn't matter as she's a princess, and so he doesn't have any chance with her. We then get to see him play the flute for all of them as they dance, and Genevieve later gets teased by her sisters for having a crush on him. And then we don't exactly get as much ship content between these two as I would have liked, but I understand why. I mean, this movie is about Genevieve and her sisters and their bond and not their love story, although I definitely would have watched a Genevieve and Derek movie spinoff as well. So the evil Rowena comes in and tries to take over, and Genevieve goes to Derek for help in figuring out what she's planning. And this man just agrees without hesitation, to the point where he even gives up his horse to get her mother's gauntlet back. Then after finding out that the princesses are missing, he's able to sneak into the palace, figure out on his own how to get to the magical dance pavilion that they've been escaping to. They then end up having to do this breathtaking duet together to be able to leave this magical land. He then of course helps them in defeating Rowena once they're back home. And then we end the movie with a wedding, which we actually get to see a lot of this time around instead of just being told that they're married. Their dance together at this wedding is perfect as well. And so while we didn't get as much content from this ship as I would have liked, I still honestly felt like their story was perfect and could do no wrong, and so I just had to have them right here on the list.
I hope you'll take this with you.
I couldn't.
It was meant for you.
No promises?
I'll take my chances.
Coming in at number 2, we have Erica and Dominic from The Princess and the Pauper. And I feel like by the end of this video, I'll have basically summarized the whole movie at this point. But nonetheless, these two definitely deserve their time to shine. So their story kind of begins in the middle of the movie after Annalise has been captured and Erica is chosen to take her place. And so by doing so, she also has to meet who Annalise is betrothed to, which is King Dominic, and she has to do so while posing as her. And so this is definitely going to create some complicated feelings for everybody involved. And Dominic, on the other hand, is also kind of freaking out over the idea of having to marry someone that he's never met before. And so he decides to disguise himself as a page, this way he can meet her first without any formality. This leads to him being in the room the first time that she has to present herself as Annalise. She walks in and of course trips and falls, and he does reach out to help her up, but she gets up on her own. And then the way that he looks at her in this scene for the first time just gives me butterflies. The ambassador then suggests that they still cancel the wedding, and Dominic has to cough to signal that he feels differently. which I think Preminger aside is probably my favorite part about this scene. Moving on to the following day where Dominic is ready to tell her who he is. He then goes to do this but overhears her singing and doesn't want to interrupt. And I know a lot of people find this moment to be creepy as she's in the bathroom and in a robe and he's just like chilling in the doorway, but I don't think he knows that and he doesn't actually go in, so I think it's fine. It's adorable even because of his reaction to her voice. I would say that it's almost like love at first listen if it wasn't clear that he was already in love with her off of first sight. We later get their actual first meeting. Dominic is clearly smitten by her and Erica as well, to the point where she almost lets her real name slip while she's introducing herself. Annalise's mother then steps in asking that Dominic play the piano for them, and he agrees on the condition that Erica sing for them, which I just feel like that whole interaction is another thing that makes me scream on the inside. They then go on to sing the most beautiful song ever written, If You Love Me For Me, and we get a montage of them exploring the palace grounds, playing fetch with Wolfie. He also instinctively picks a blue rose for her amongst all of the pink ones. Afterwards, Dominic tells her that there's something about her that he really likes, that she's honest, no pretenses. And I just love this compliment so much because I feel like it shows that he's falling for her because of who she is, not because of her beauty or her talent. But of course, this just causes Erica to panic as being honest is the exact opposite of what she's doing, and by the fact that she's already falling in love with him. But of course, things that end up coming crashing down right after Dominic gives Erica her engagement ring. And right before they almost kiss. I feel like I should add that in there too. So Preminger reveals Erica as Erica and not Annalise, and she gets taken off to prison. And just the heartbreak on Dominic's face and her trying to explain everything to him, like, it's just such a heartbreaking scene. But true love prevails as Dominic goes in disguise to rescue Erica from prison, which is funny because she really was already halfway there by the time that he gets there. While they're alone, she tries to fight him off by stepping on his foot. Dominic reveals himself and she goes to explain, but he says that there's no time for that as they go off to defeat Preminger. So it's a happy ending. Erica is free, her debt's been paid, and she now has the chance to live her dream of being a singer. But then that leaves her relationship with Dominic on the table. As she's leaving, he asks her if he can convince her to stay, but she explains that she's dreamed of this her whole life and she needs to see the world and sing. And so then all he asks is that she take her engagement ring with her. Which, I don't know, maybe I'm just sensitive to like recently getting engaged, but even just like summarizing this scene makes me emotional. So Erica goes and sees the world, but as the narrator says, sometimes being free is choosing not to go, but to stay. And here I go again. We end with Erica living what she thought was her dream, but ultimately deciding that her new dream is to be with Dominic. She returns and they get married, and once again, I'm trying not to cry. Anyways, these two are just so perfect. I absolutely love them, and I know my next ship is just as good. But honestly, after going over their whole story again, I'm just reminded as to how much I love these two. If these two are your favorite, I definitely understand why, as it comes very close for me. But honestly, the #1 spot on this list was determined before I even started making this video, which is of course Preminger and his own reflection. I'm kidding. Let's move on to #1.
Annika! Annika, can you hear me? Annika, I never should have left you.
So I feel like Annika and Aiden have got to be the most developed and most iconic Barbie ship of all time. They have the absolute best enemies to lovers story, and honestly it just wouldn't have felt right to give anybody on this list the top spot other than them. So obviously these two meet while Princess Annika is on a mission to find the Wand of Light to defeat Wenlock. She runs into Aiden while in the Forbidden Forest, and they have a very once upon a time like meet cute. Annika has been captured, and so he stumbles upon her while she's dangling from a tree, and the banter is just like off the charts from the very moment that they meet. He tells her that only fools come to the Forbidden Forest, and she points out that he's there. Brietta introduces them as sisters, and when Annika notices that her bear cub is missing, Aiden asks if she's her cousin. Annika then decides to slide into the nearby giant's house so that she can rescue Shiver, and Aiden does not hesitate in going to save her. In typical Barbie movie fashion though, he is a little late and Annika just saves herself. This leads us to a scene afterwards where Annika enlists his help in finding the Wand of Light. He's hesitant to assist them at first until Annika strikes a nerve asking if he's ever done something that he wishes he could take back. After he walks off, Annika is frustrated, calling him a jerk, and Brietta points out that he's a cute jerk. Actually, I think she calls him a mule. Annika claims that she doesn't notice that he's cute. And I feel like it's moments like this one that just make the enemies to lovers trope so good. The team then ends up at a pawn shop to find the next item that they need. The owner then mistakes them for a couple looking for an engagement ring, to which both of them have a very over-the-top reaction to, obviously trying to overcompensate for these feelings that are developing. They then continue on their journey and bonding, and that night Annika learns about his tragic past where he ended up gambling all of his family's savings away. The following day they finish the Wand of Light and turn Brietta back into her human self. Aiden says his goodbyes, but he's extremely hesitant to leave them alone against Wenlock. But of course Annika reassures him that everything will be fine. But then we quickly come to find out that everything is not going to be fine. Annika and Brietta end up getting chased down by Wenlock and he traps Annika in an avalanche. Luckily though, Aiden is quick to arrive. I'm not exactly too sure how he knew where they were or how he got there, but I choose to believe that their love for one another showed him the way. So he freaks out and starts digging in the snow for her, and her sister just stands there and watches for some reason, like she wasn't just given human hands and can get down there and help as well. But still, I just love this scene so much as it's a great example of his feelings for her. The cliche of having like one of them getting really badly hurt and the other one going crazy, which showcases their true feelings, is just one of my favorite things. It then gets even better when they go to the Cloud Castle and he begs her to wake up, and then she wakes up with the biggest smile on her face because he's there. Moving on, they of course work together to defeat Wenlock. We get a great scene with the two of them skating together into his lair. Aiden even sacrifices the gem for her that he was going to use to pay off his parents' debt, or I guess his debt. He's the one who gambled all the money away. And while we don't get a wedding with these two, we do get to see them reunite with both sides of their parents. And we finish with a breathtaking scene where they're performing a skating routine on a rink in the clouds. I just don't think it gets much more perfect than that. Honestly, I feel like these two aren't even just like one of my favorite Barbie movie ships of all time. I think they're just like one of my favorite ships of all time. I love everything about them. I feel like their story is just pure perfection. I also love Aiden's relationship with her sister. I found their dynamic to be so endearing, and the fact that she gave him the courage that he needed to be able to face his family again. Like I said, I just knew from the moment that I started making this video that these two would be the very top of my list, and I feel like a lot of you will agree with me on that. Though I will admit that after Erica and Dominic practically made me cry, I am kind of questioning this decision, but it's too late now. As always, I want to know what your favorite Barbie movie ship is, so please leave it in the comments down below. I can't wait to read all about it. I think it's funny how I can go from talking about one ship for like 5 seconds and then another for like 5 minutes because I just get so invested in their story. Like I said in the beginning, you guys have been begging me for Barbie content for like ever, and so while this idea came pretty naturally to me, I'm not really too sure what you guys would like to see next, so please leave those suggestions in the comments as well. Also, in love stories news, you might have seen that I posted a Google form for you guys to submit the couples that you would like me to cover next, and I might be taking these results a little bit too seriously and basically treating it like market research, but it has honestly made my life just that much easier. So please, if there are any ships that come to mind that you would like to see a video on, you can enter them down below. The link is in the description. But with that being said, that is all from me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. I didn't realize this till now, but I kind of feel like this shirt is giving the kid from Horton Hears a Who. You know the one. The bangs probably don't help either. Ah! Oh my god, live reaction of McDonnelly seeing our proposal. Oh, that's so crazy. I gotta go tell Josh. Baby! We're making, tomorrow starts today.